Welcome and thank you for joining the Seeds event today. I am Lauren McAfee. I will provide technical support for today's event. If you run into trouble, please use the chat feature to contact me directly, and please use the thumbs up reaction to let us know you can hear. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes. Today's event is being recorded. Please note that your microphone was muted by default when you logged in. However, you are encouraged to type comments and questions into the chat. All questions asked will be answered at the end of the event. Live captioning is enabled in Teams. You can click the More Actions button, which is the three dots at the top of the screen, then click on Language and Speech, select Turn on Live Captions, select English, and click on Confirm. Finally, your feedback is very important to us. At the conclusion of today's event, a link to a brief survey will appear. We would really love to hear what you think so we can continue to improve and update this series. At this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, Ms. Dawn Davey, Chief, Continental District Labor and Employee Relations Division, Human Capital Services. Ms. Davey, we are honored that you are here with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Thank you. My name is Dawn Davey. I am the Continental District Human Capital Services LER Chief. A little bit about me. I am currently in my 23rd year of federal service. I started my career with the Transportation Security Administration and served with them for 14 years. And then I transferred to VHA and was with them for 7 years. And now I have been with VBA for a little over 2. The majority of my federal time has been spent in the LER world. However, I have functioned as a generalist at TSA, so I have a little bit of benefits information or knowledge, workers' comp, payroll background, and probably enough staffing to be dangerous. So I welcome you to this conflict resolution training, and I hope I'm able to offer you some information to add to your supervisor toolbox. I'd like to introduce Nafi. I think you guys all know her, the Seeds. She's in the Seeds office. She's popping on. There she is. Okay. And she's going to monitor the chat and then she'll help us out at the end with the questions, and I have one poll that I'll do. So next slide. So today I'll be discussing conflict in the workplace, understanding the importance of emotion, and some different approaches to resolve conflicts in a positive manner. Next slide. We'll look at conflict in the workplace and the importance of emotions, approaches to resolving conflicts, and some tools for you to consider to use when you have a conflict. Next slide. So my first activity is a poll on what do you think of with the word conflict? Is there a definition here that resonates most with you? Substantial differences between people, one or more parties not getting what they want, or emotionally charged atmosphere, or all of the above? And I think we have a poll coming up. So the poll is in the chat.
And we have the stats coming in, Miss Davey. So it looks like majority of the chat agrees with D, all of the above, which I also press D. So
okay, I would agree with you, and it depends on the conflict. You know, sometimes we can, sometimes it'll be just A, but most of the time the atmosphere gets somewhat charged when we have some type of a conflict that we're dealing with. Could we go ahead and go to the next slide? So the definition of conflict is a disagreement. It can be a time to grow in your relationship. However, poorly managed conflicts can destroy that relationship. Therefore, we need to manage the conflicts to provide growth rather than destruction. I'm sure all of you have been in relationships that have gone both ways. Next slide. Conflict may have a positive impact. While it is often looked at in the negative, it can improve communication, employee collaboration, and engagement. However, when left unchecked, it may have negative results, which may lead to a toxic culture, lowered employee morale and motivation. It can result in poor decision-making and wasted resources. Unfortunately, in LAR, I often see the negative side of conflict and how it affects employees and managers. As a manager, ignoring a conflict is usually never a good idea. This often shows the employee causing the conflict that you are okay with the behavior, and those that are observing the behavior are effective too, which may lead to lower morale and a toxic situation. Next slide. So after looking at the impact of conflict, we need to take a look at what causes conflict. In a recent article from the Harvard Business Review, I learned that most workplace conflict originates from one or more of these issues. Poor communication, this may be from the deliverer or the receiver. The deliverer may not be asking the audience if the audience understands, while the receiver may not speak up if they don't understand. Unclear performance expectations. This may come from a one-way discussion, and for instance, passing the performance standards to the employee in an email and not having a discussion, or passively just sending an email to the employee. Not having that discussion can allow the employee to feel as they can't ask questions. Time management issues, it's self-explanatory, and poorly defined roles. I'm sure that all of you have worked in places where an employee takes the lead, and that causes confusion when the actual supervisor does not step up and take the reins. Another example is when an employee consistently questions the supervisor's authority. If you don't address this conflict, it will likely snowball into the negative impacts that we spoke about. Next slide. And then you can just go to the next one too. So we're going to talk about the importance of emotions. Emotions have the potential to play either positive or negative in the negative role in negotiation. So before we can work on a conflict, we have to check our own emotions. Sometimes emotions may be positive, but often in a conflict they are intense, and when they are intense, communication breaks down. Whether a conversation gets heated or a manager is overwhelmed and exhausted by an employee's behavior, the supervisor's job is to keep the emotions in check. Remember that you are the example. Working in LER, this is something that I assist managers with all the time. Often I will receive a call where a conflict has been allowed to go on far too long and the supervisor is just done with the employee. They're exasperated and they want the employee to just go away, which normally their suggestion is a removal from federal service. This is when we start discussing the supervisor's emotions and taking them out of the equation. Then the discussion about addressing the issue at hand and what options are available for the supervisor are laid out. So please make sure that you engage your LER partners to assist you. That's what we're here for, is to help you. So if you ever get into that exasperated situation where you just need to talk and vent, we're here for you. Just reach out to us. And hopefully we can help give you a path forward at least. Next slide. So 5 approaches to conflict resolution. Next slide. Developed by psychologists Kenneth Thomas and Ralph Kilman are the Thomas Kilman model, or is the Thomas Kilman model, which identifies 5 approaches to conflict. This came out in the early 1970s, and it's distinguished by 2 dimensions. There's assertiveness, which is the extent to which the individual attempts to satisfy their own concerns, and cooperativeness, which is the extent to which the individual attempts to satisfy the concerns of the other person. Notice that only the collaborative mode seeks mutually beneficial outcomes or wins-wins. The others have more zero-sum mindset where one side or the other must prevail. I'm going to go ahead and go through the different modes that are, there's competing, collaborating, avoiding and accommodating, and compromising. None of them, there's Some people are always on avoiding. Some people are always on accommodating. It's kind of best, we'll see, to just have kind of a mix of things. So as I go through, try to think of where you land yourself most often. Next slide, please. Competing. This mode says only one can win, and it had better be me. It's highly assertive and has low cooperation. This mode involves pursuing one's own concerns at the other person's expense, using whatever power seems appropriate to win one's own position, standing up for one's own rights, defending the position which one believes is correct, and simply trying to win. You're not hearing the other side of the story. You're not concerned with what the other person wants. It's literally all about you. This fundamental to this approach is the belief that one's own side is more important than the other side, and it must take precedence combined with the perception that what the other side wants is mutually exclusive. This could be effective in situations where quick or decisive action is needed, such as in emergencies or where unpopular actions need implementing, such as cost cutting or enforcing unpopular rules. Sometimes policies come down that people don't agree with, but we just have to enforce them. This is where you would be enforcing the policy regardless of what people think about it. Next slide. Accommodating is it's unassertive and cooperative. This has a lowest assertiveness and high cooperation. This is you saying, okay, let's just do it your way. This mode involves neglecting one's own concerns to satisfy the concerns of the other person. There is an element of self-sacrifice to this mode. It could also be used when maintaining harmony and avoiding disruption, or more important, when avoiding disruption is more important than winning, or if one realizes the other side actually deserves to prevail. I know sometimes in my, in management, sometimes the team will have a different idea and it doesn't really matter which way it goes. So you offer up the win to them and go that route because it doesn't really matter which way we pick. And it makes them feel empowered some. So it's when you can offer those, I say go ahead and try to offer them because it helps your team to feel empowered and like they have some time that they're involved in decision making. Next slide, please. Sorry, I caught a little bit of a cold right before this, so. The next one is avoiding. This mode says, can we talk about this another time? This is pushing everything off. It's low assertive and low cooperation. The mode involves ignoring the conflict altogether or postponing the issue to be dealt with by others or at a later time. People might choose this mode when the issue is trivial or when there's no chance of winning or when potential damage of confronting the conflict outweighs the benefit of the resolution. Sometimes it's less of a conscious choice and more of an automatic response for a party that lacks the confidence to use a more assertive competing style. I wouldn't really recommend this one. This one, I would say, most often winds you up in those phone calls where you're exasperated and over it with your employee and you just are done because you've been avoiding those conversations. That's where I see this one land with most supervisors. Next slide, please. Compromising, this is, can we just meet in the middle on this? It's moderate assertiveness, moderate cooperation. This mode is intermediate in both assertiveness and cooperativeness. The objective is to negotiate some expedient, mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfies both parties. Compromising may be useful when the goals are moderately important, but not worth the effort or potential disruption of a more assertive approach. It can provide a quick middle ground solution and something that's acceptable if imperfect to both sides and feels roughly fair. This is usually the ideal compromise as both sides feel like they've won. Something you will see and we'll see this referred to is also cooperative power. Next slide, please. collaborating, this mode says, I think that we both can get what we need. That's highly assertive and high cooperation. This mode involves working with the other party to find a solution that fully satisfies the concerns of both. It entails digging into an issue to identify the underlying concerns of the two individuals and to find an alternative that meets both sets of concerns. This constructive approach is valuable when the quality and acceptance of the solution are critical. Encouraging creative problem solving and integration of multiple viewpoints, it can also generate solutions that are more durable in the long term. This approach is definitely one that is more pushed, I see, in VBA in a lot of different initiatives. So it's trying to work on things together, trying to embrace both sides of the both teams that are working on it, and trying to just take everything into consideration to come to a point that's agreed upon. It's very people pleasing. Next slide, please. So collaborative skills, you need to have several points. It does take a lot more time when you're doing this mode because you need to be clear about what you need. You have to anticipate the needs of others. You're looking at that common ground and you're trying to come to a mutual agreeable point. You're considering their behaviors, that, what their side of the story is, and trying to take into consideration everything that the other side's throwing at you. And the most important portion of this one is to listen. You need to let them talk and then ask questions back, and explore alternatives creatively, and then be open with your own feelings. And it's really trying to work on the issues and come to a common ground. Next slide, please. So Nafi, could you look at the chat? Because I'd like to go through and see, like, what type of approach do you use most often and why? And was there an approach that speaks more to you in your management style? I know that I would say that I'm more of a collaborator. And in LER, you kind of have to be. We always have to look at all sides of the story, make sure that especially when we're working on cases, make sure the case is going to stand up, look for the holes where, we might lose a case, give the employee the benefit of the doubt, also starting lower, and with progressive discipline, we're trying to curtail and give the employee the best shot at changing their ways, basically. And then our disciplinary system is set up to a proposal and a deciding official. So we try to have those people be different, so the employee is able to give their side of the story, so that if there's extenuating circumstances that the proposing official didn't realize, something that might mitigate something. When we're going in and we're trying to, there's a new project and you're looking at different ways to do things. If you go into a project and it's only your way, you're going to distance the people that you're working with, and it's just really, I find it very hard to work with people that it's my way or the higher way, and they don't give, there's no give, there's no discussion, because it's very black and white. This is the way it is, and that's all it's going to be. So
yeah, definitely some agreements. A lot of people in the chat are saying they try to use the collaborative approach. I have one person that talked about accommodating. Rebecca said, I think it really just depends on the situation, but I think it's mostly collaboration. So yeah, it just depends on, and another person, Michael said, depends on the constraints of time. So like how much time do you have to actually pursue? So yeah,
it does.
A lot of
I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in management, a lot of times, we're not into discussing. If we have to have something done, it is what it is. We're going to be more authoritative and giving the direction. And you can hear some feedback, but ultimately you're the manager and you have to make the choice. It's when you have the times that you can collaborate those are always nice to try to buy in and get your employees' opinions and maybe be able to take those into consideration. I think it does help with like your team building and making your team feel closer when they can have a little bit of buy-in into what's going on. Okay, so Victoria's saying, as much as I'd love to be avoidant, is not the best for management. I agree. It's hard. I agree that, sometimes taking those steps, you push them off, it doesn't ever make it better. So if you can wrap your head around to not pushing it off and having those conversations, and sometimes the avoidant ones are more so conflict resolutions that we need to have with employees, that behaviors are really more of the issues. I don't seem to have conflicts like with just giving direction of work or whatever. I know some of you do, but that's when you should be coming to LER and having us help you with those conversations, or even crafting an email on direction. So we're definitely there to try to assist as best we can. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide. And we're going to talk about effective conflict management. So I discussed the different modes of conflict management. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the emotional side and ways to assist when keeping our emotions in check. I think that's probably the biggest stumbling block. Like, we can have these different modes of communication that we like to embrace, but our emotions oftentimes get in the way. And that's most of the time the area that we need to curtail. Next slide, please. Sorry, you can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions, and to understand and respond to the emotions of others. There's self-awareness. That's the foundation of emotional intelligence. It involves recognizing and understanding our emotions and how they affect us and others. And by being in tune with our feelings, we can effectively manage our lives according to our emotional state. This enables us to more accurately assess our strengths, weaknesses, and values. Developing self-awareness is crucial, as it allows us to identify the areas where we need to improve and to use our emotions constructively. All of this goes inside work and outside work. I know we have emotions that run high outside of work also, and families, and trying to manage everything, home and work, and then coming in and being self-aware and not bringing your emotions to work and keeping those in check. That all comes into play also. The next one is self-management. Once we have an understanding of our emotions through self-awareness, the next step is self-management. So this encompasses controlling our emotions and adapting to changing circumstances. Like I said, outside home, something might be going on, your kid's in trouble at school, you have to take off and run, but you got a heavy meeting to be to, and trying to manage those things and keeping those emotions in check. But by effectively managing our emotions, we can channel them into positive actions and reactions. This skill involves utilizing techniques such as mindfulness, stress management, and emotional regulation to maintain a healthy emotional balance. As we enhance our self-management abilities, we become more resilient and capable of handling challenges and setbacks. I'm just going to put a plug in for our We section of HCS. They do some really good mindfulness calls and exercises. So if you can chime into any of those, they're a great resource for you. Social awareness refers to our ability to perceive, interpret, and respond to the emotions of others. This skill enables us to empathize with others, understand their perspectives, and ultimately build stronger, deeper connections. By practicing social awareness, we can navigate various social settings and tailor our interactions to align with the emotional states of those in turn. This also leads us to successful collaboration and communication and fosters a supportive environment. So the final step in emotional intelligence is the relationship management. This involves using our self-awareness, self-management, and social awareness skills to establish and maintain healthy relationships. By recognizing and responding to emotions of others, we can adapt our communication and actions accordingly, leading to more effective conflict resolution, cooperation, and teamwork. Mastering relationship management allows us to cultivate positive, lasting connections, both personally and professionally, which ultimately contribute to our overall satisfaction and success. I see that Nafi did put in our chat something about the DISC assessment. I don't know if you have done that or not. It's a really good assessment to do with your team, just to know what you're dealing with and the different types of personalities and people that you deal with. So yeah, I really like that. And if you went to SMT, there's also some other activities that get passed along to you as little nuggets to do with your team. I started doing those with my team, and they really liked it. They like the collaboration between it, and just learning a little bit about each other. We are all virtual teams, so we don't have any in-person involvement for the most part. We got 3 days together this year. Some of the people I've worked with for 5 years, and that was my first time meeting them. So it really helps to have those types of activities on your team meetings, just to it's an icebreaker, but it's also good to get to know each other, and it's non-confrontational. So I really like those types of things. So highly suggest those. Can I get the next slide, please? So some of the empowering behaviors to achieve emotional intelligence are talking about our feelings. Some people are great at that and some people not so much. Being clear about our needs or wants. People can't read your mind. So you need to tell them and not just assume that they're getting it from your body language. We all know that like email is really hard sometimes to tell tone or the team's messages. And so being clear when we're speaking about our needs and wants. Searching for common ground, remaining calm and treating others with respect. And the big word is listening. Again, we're going to go into listening a little bit more. Just you can't know and understand what your employees are trying to convey if you're not listening to them. So if they're trying to be clear with their words, then we need to at least give them the common courtesy of listening to them and trying not to do other things as they're talking to us. Next slide, please. I'm going to grab a drink real quick. Sorry about that. Active listening is a communication skill that involves going beyond simple hearing the word that a person's speaking, and it's about actively processing and seeking to understand the meaning and intent behind them. It requires a mindful and focused participant in the communication process. Some of the things that this includes is being fully present in the conversation. I know that in my virtual world, that is hard sometimes. We're on camera in a call with somebody, yet we have Teams messages that are popping up, or our phone starts ringing through the computer. You have, emails coming in, and you're trying to, multitask, but also to be present in a conversation with an employee. We have to be intentional about that. And then showing interest by practicing good eye contact. I really try to be on camera with the people that I'm speaking to, especially in our virtual world, and making good eye contact. When you're in the office, it's a lot easier. They come and pop in your room and you're sitting there with them and having the conversation. I think it's easier to invest the time and show them that you're present in your conversation. But again, like those distractions that we have in our virtual world, they do become stumbling blocks. And so making sure that we have eye contact and get the other person on camera so that you are having an actual conversation. It shows them that you're invested in what they have to say. and sometimes they don't want to come on camera, but it also it makes them more invested in the conversation too. So it allows you to notice those nonverbal cues. And then when you're talking to them, try to ask the open-end questions and encourage further responses. If you don't understand something, ask them. I like to offer choices and then have them pick things if I can. Just it helps them be more invested. I do the same thing with my kids, and they love it. Anyhow, paraphrasing and reflecting back on what has been said, recapturing and stating back what you heard. So they finished their conversation with you. So what I'm hearing is, and then rephrase that back to them. Listening to understand rather than respond. I try also to take notes so that when they're done, I can respond to their questions and go through things that I've taken notes on. So I'm not interrupting them, and I'm trying to get everything that they're trying to say to me. I do that with Teams or whatever. If you call me and you have an issue, I'm likely have a notebook in front of me taking notes. So, and then withholding judgment and advice. That is super hard for me. I don't know about you. I feel like it's almost a management type role. Maybe not the judgment portion, but the advice portion. And sometimes that's what they're coming to you for. So, that we do have to be careful on the judgment portion. Next slide. Nafi, do we have anything in the chat that I need to?
No, just people just commenting on the DISC assessment. I think, again, you talked about emotional intelligence. I think that sparked me, of course, because I teach DISC, but just people in chat who are familiar with what DISC is. And then there was another mention of a hunch assessment that Jason mentioned. So I was definitely going to take a look and see what that is. I've never heard of that one. So
yeah,
that's something I'm going to take back with me.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll have some time at the end. So if you want to mention anything, Jason, on that, that would be.
Oh, yeah. And he just dropped the link.
We already have it in the chat.
Wow. Perfect. Thank you, Jason. We'll definitely make sure I attach that to the end of the presentation. Thank you. But yeah, no, just everybody is agreeing with you. I think conflict in general, that conversation is always uncomfortable, even whether it's with an employee or not. And just knowing how to pass the information, right? I think that's also a good piece. And you kind of talked about those different things earlier about paraphrasing, active listening, things that we're capable of doing. But sometimes I think when it's time to deliver information, we tend to forget some of those tools that we have. So I think this is just refreshing for all of us to hear.
It's, I do, oftentimes if I have to go into a conversation that has potential for some heated conflict, or they're not going to like the what I'm going to deliver, I do keep my talking points. I get those pulled together and just in my notebook, have those in front of me so that I can stay on task and not get distracted from the rebuttal. And so that does help. And then also makes sure you are talking about everything that you intended to speak to in your conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. So destructive behaviors. So these are some of the behaviors that we should be avoiding when we're attempting to resolve conflict and keeping your emotions in check. Sarcasm. That one is the number one that I struggle with. I have a very sarcastic personality. But in a conflict situation, it does come across wrong, and the person probably isn't going to take it as sarcasm. So we have to be careful with those. If you're a sarcastic person, that's a little hard to keep in check sometimes. We just have to definitely focus on that. Generalizing, the you always, or blaming people that it's all your fault. Obviously, if you're told that you always do something or it's all your fault, you always is very definitive, and it's all your fault is putting blame on the other person, and it generally just makes them defensive, just those words. So try to keep those words out of your conversation. Judging and stating that you're wrong, or demanding that the person change, like if you would only do whatever. So those types of things where you're stating specifically that they're wrong, normally doesn't get a great reaction out of people. maybe instead of you're wrong, I like to say, well, maybe another way of looking at this is, and give another opinion and on how they could look at it, especially judging people when that you believe you know what they're thinking. So that's again, in the listen portion, hearing their feedback so that you're not just taking for granted or getting opinion of what they're really trying to say, or what their body language is saying, most likely. Not taking responsibility. Sometimes we as managers mess up. And I actually had an employee that I just went to, and I'm like, hey, I just need to come to you. Like, I'm wrong on this. And he was blown away that I came and told him that I was wrong on something. He's never had a supervisor tell him that he was wrong, that had been wrong before. So, I think taking responsibility for things that we say that might be incorrect, or actions that happen, it just helps enforce the relationship and make it better, because you're human just like them. Exactly. No one's perfect. So taking responsibility for things is huge, and it definitely shows that you're human to your employees, and you care enough about them to go back and tell them, hey, I'm sorry about this, or whatever. So discounting the opinions of others, when you're just dismissing them, you're just making them feel like they don't have an opinion. It really is hard for people to be in a relationship and have that relationship grow when you're dismissing them constantly. They're going to stop coming to you and not be able to rely on you. And truthfully, they're just going to go somewhere else, which is going to just make that whole thing snowball again. So all of these are potentially destructive in a relationship, and most put up a wall where considering the other person's opinion would show that you are at least considering the other person, and you potentially value them, or you're at least validating them. Next slide. So I just wanted to go through, I'm going to open it up in a second to some discussion, have Nafi come in. I don't think I need to read you the summary of it, but keeping our emotions in check is probably the number one when you're dealing with a relationship. Hearing the people, listening to them, validating them. And if you can, let them have some buy-in to some of the decisions that you're making. Especially if you have to make that decision that you don't have time for buy-in, at least going and hearing, is this working, or is there something else we can do? Because sometimes we have to make a change that we don't have time to discuss and see what their opinions are, but we do have time afterwards. So that's another way to get some buy-in from your employees, is to do a recap and see, hey, what's working, what's not working, is there anything I can change? So Nafi, do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to just even make a point. I was going to make a point to what you said about circling back. I think that's sometimes where we drop the ball, is not circling back when you say you're going to do it. I think employees really take that to heart when you say you are going to do something or follow back up with them. So making sure that you're doing that. So that was a great point. And also, I just want to mention some conversation in the chat. Myron said being accountable to your team is critical. I think that 1,000%. Jason also said humility is a prerequisite to successful leadership. That was a gem that he dropped. I was like, yeah, like mic drop, boom. Yes. Like, yes, you got to be humble when you're in leadership. So definitely, that was some of the comments in the chat.
I'm sure we've all worked for the managers where that wasn't the case, or they were, it's on my way or the highway. I know I have, and there was nothing, I could never talk to her about anything, any decision. And we would rehash, like she had this notebook that she would like go back and try like an idea that she had tried like a year before that didn't work, just to see if it worked again. It was so frustrating to the employees because we're like, we already did this, it didn't work, and she would never listen to anything. We had to play out the whole thing again. It was a very frustrating world to be in. So yeah, definitely having humility, listening to them, following up, being accountable, and yeah, it's all really important. Is there anything else?
That was it. We can go to the next slide.
So,
And
sorry, the next
Michelle.
slide's questions, I think. Well, I guess it's not. I missed the next slide.
Oh, no, no worries. So if anybody has any comments or questions, this is your opportunity in the chat. Ms. Davy is here, willing to answer any questions you all may have. Again, I know this is a very important topic when it comes to conflict resolution, as we all go through it throughout, leadership. So, and then I do have a question for you, Ms. Davy. As far as people getting in touch with you when they do have situations at work, are there certain is it broken? Is your office broken into certain ways of how people can get in contact with certain LER specialists? Like, how does that work?
Yes, we have regions. So, and each region has a chief. So I can go ahead and drop our SharePoint into the chat. And if anybody has questions, I would think that most people know who their chief is, but if not, I'll go ahead and drop that into the chat and they can contact us that way. If you can't find them, you can reach out to me and I can get you to the proper person at least. So it's not a problem. I recognize multiple names on here and in the chat. So a lot of them are in my area. So yeah, hit me up.
So we do have one question. What do you do with that employee who is never happy? Too much work, not enough work, the wrong type of work, complains about work that they are assigned? That's a great question, Michelle.
Yeah, so as long as they're doing they can complain. There's just going to be people that are complainers, but ultimately, if they're complaining and doing the work, oh yeah, I hear you, like confirming it, but we need to get the work done. Those types of things. If they're not doing the work, then that's a different story. But there are people that are it's I'm always right person. It always has to be their way. You're working with those people and those people are working for you. So their way is the only way. And ultimately they're not in that position. So sometimes a reminder of the position that they hold or letting them know that next time a supervisory position is open, they should really apply for that. And so, responding back to them is fine, but there's if they're doing the work, they're just complaining. And some people are just complainers. So, I mean, there's not much you can do about it, unfortunately. Manage their complaints by, encouraging them or, yeah, but you always do a great job or whatever. So,
It seems like Michelle may need to reach out to you privately about this employee. Get some more personal tools that you can give her for sure.
Real job, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's totally fine if you have the, and sometimes there's just because. So I do notice that sometimes employees treat the managers disrespectfully, and that's not okay. Like you don't have to take it when employees are just coming back at you rudely. We don't have to like everybody, and we're not going to like everybody, and employees are not going to like each other, and that's okay. Like that's life, but you still have to work professionally. I'm not asking, or saying that you have to be best friends, and you're not telling your employees that they have to be best friends. However, they do have to work professionally, and if they're not working professionally, then that's an issue. So, and you can address those, especially when they put them in writing, which often they do. And they're, it's if you have team chats and it gets a little hairy sometimes, reminding them like this is a professional environment. Let's keep it professional. If they don't, then you gave them a warning. That's a different area that you probably should be contacting LER. So, not everybody's going to like each other. However, we all get to work together.
Yeah.
I like to encourage them to apply for another
exactly.
position.
I was just talking to say, I'm like, that should be the final step at that point. Yeah.
So Victoria asked if they aren't doing the work. That would be a disciplinary issue. Like they're getting paid. So it's either we handle through performance or conduct. So that would be I would encourage you to reach out to LER. I'm going to drop in our site, our SharePoint. It has a bunch of resources in it, but also there is a LER mailbox for your servicing region. It's at the very top, so it's a good way to get in touch with us if you have an issue. There's an intake form that's right there too. It's right in blue at the very top. So if you want to get in touch with us or need to get in touch with us, that's definitely the way to go.
And I'll make sure I send that out along with today's slides from the presentation.
That's perfect, yeah.
Yep. Okay, any more questions for Ms. Davy before we let her go?
Thank you for the opportunity to do this. Hopefully I passed along some good nuggets. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Davy.
No problem. No problem.
This was our last Seeds of the year. Hopefully you all stay tuned. We have some new and exciting things coming in in 2025 with Seeds in terms of our restructuring of the program. So please look out in your emails. We have some exciting new things happening in January. So we will see you all in January. I'm going to turn it over back to Lauren to close us out. Wishing you all happy holidays and happy new year in advance. Be safe and take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davy, for the excellent presentation, and thank you all for attending. We would love to hear from you, so please take a moment to fill out the survey so we can continue to improve and update this series. That concludes our session for today, and have a great rest of your day.